Hello everyone and welcome to our channel, and today I'll be reading an Arlecchino Listener by me. So let's get into it. The chilling winds of Snezhnaya howled against the windows, muffled only slightly by the thick walls of the building. Inside, the atmosphere was warm, but dense. Arlecchino hardly ever got sick, but right now, it seemed that luck was not on her side, as she was evidently sick, and even worse, she was refusing to admit it. You stood with her arms crossed, watching her shuffle through the papers at her desk. Her usual composed demeanor was slightly off, her movements slower, and even her breaths were uneven. Arlecchino, you need to rest. And she did not even glance up at you. I don't have time for that. These reports need to be done by morning. Her voice was as steady as ever, but you noticed the faint rasp in her tone, placing a hand on the desk to get her attention. You're burning up, and you've been coughing all day. If you keep pushing yourself like this, you'll only get worse. Her crimson eyes flicked up to meet yours, narrowed with defiance. I've worked through worse. And that's not the point. Then what is the point? The children depend on me, and weakness is not an option. You softened at her words, knowing how much she carried on her shoulders. Still, you were not going to let her self-sacrifice go unchecked. And how will you take care of them if you collapse? They need you healthy. I need you healthy. And her hand stilled on the papers, her gaze lingering on you. And for a moment, she looked like she might argue, but then she leaned back in her chair with a reluctant sigh. You're persistent. I'll give you that. And taking that as a victory, you stepped behind her, gently resting your hands on her shoulders. Come on, just for tonight. The reports will still be here tomorrow. She closed her eyes briefly, leaning into her touch, as if the weight of the day was finally catching up to her. You're insufferable when you're right. You know that? You grinned. I've heard that once or twice. And with your help, she stood, so you could feel the slight tremble in her frame. Guiding her to the couch, you coaxed her to sit, while you fetched the blanket, and she watched you with an unreadable expression as you tucked it around her. You don't have to fuss over me, she murmured, though her voice had softened considerably. I do. When you're too stubborn to take care of yourself, I do. You say. And for the first time that night, a faint smile tugged at her lips. You're quite lucky I tolerate that. And you're lucky enough I care enough to argue with you. You're difficult, frustrating sometimes, and I absolutely love you. She chuckled at that, and she waxed a little bit against you. And that said more than words ever could. For the rest of the day, you made it your duty to take care of her, making her soup or tea, something to help with her throat. It was important that she was able to get that care. The thing is, she was completely unused to it, unable to adjust. This amount of love and care, it was not something that she was familiar with. To her, all of that was entirely new. It was so strange, for someone to coddle her in this manner. And just because she's sick. She never took breaks when she was sick. And honestly, she still couldn't believe that she was taking one. After all, if she had told herself yesterday that she was taking a break because she was sick, she would have thought something else entirely. It was lazy and totally against her work ethic, especially for someone who carried burden all on their shoulders, and she refused to share that burden with anyone else. But right now, seeing her do this with you, and knowing she trusted you enough, it was more than you could have ever wished for. To know that she knew she could depend on you, that you were someone that she could trust. Arlie, are you feeling better? He asked her at one point, and she went quiet for a little bit, then nodded. Yes, I suppose so. Really? Are you certain? You asked, and she could tell how concerned you were, how much you cared, and it just made her eyes soften even more. Yes, really. And when I wake up next morning, I'm sure I'll be better. So don't worry about me. I truly mean it, she says. And you nod, kissing your cheek. I won't. I mean, you are Arlecchino. It would be a little bit stupid to worry about you. But I guess I'll always just be a little worried. I can't help that. It's simply because I love you. You say, and she laughed softly, a fond smile on her face. Well, at the very least, that was something she could understand, and something that she would treasure forever, because your love was something that was so important to her, something that she treasured, and something that even she sometimes doubted she deserved. And she would do her best to treasure it and to make sure that it never goes to waste.